Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to Computer Science 4300. And today we are going to be talking about the course project, and then I have a short-ish lecture after that on game loops. So I've moved around things a little bit, and I decided that the course project might take, 20 to 30 minutes to talk about, and then the rest of the lecture can be this short PowerPoint lecture about a little bit more advanced game loops. Hope everyone had a good weekend, and I hope Assignment 3 is going well. I've had surprisingly few questions about Assignment 3, and so that's either really good or really bad. It's really good because people are doing well with it, but it might be really bad because maybe I get all of those questions next Monday, the day before it's due, instead of a week before it's due. So please, if you haven't started Assignment 3 yet, please start Assignment 3. Okay. So let's have a look at what you're going to have to do for the project. Here is a PDF file that I just uploaded to the course website. So you can go under the syllabus section and you can find this PDF file if you want to follow along on your own. This is subject to change a little bit if I find any typos or due dates that are not completely correct, or I may add a feature in the next week or so. It's pretty finalized, but it's not 100% finalized. I want to be able to make changes to this if possible. But pretty much this is what the project is going to be about. So I'll just go through and read all of this, and that way by reading it out loud, I can make sure that I haven't missed anything or that I haven't put anything in here that isn't supposed to be here. Also, just as a reminder, if we look at the course syllabus, let me open that up real quick. So this is the course syllabus for this term, and if we look at the marking scheme, the final game project is worth 50% of the course, okay? And that 50% of the course, not only is it worth a lot, but because this course has no exams, you must pass the final project to pass the course, okay? So the whole point of this course is, through the assignments, to teach you how to make a game, and then you're going to make a game. And so it can't be a game programming course without you actually making a big game. So that game, as you can see here, is going to be made in groups of up to 4 people. So what I recommend is that you get together with another group who did the assignments together. So assignments were in groups of 2. So that means that 2 groups for the assignments could get together and do the game project. Excuse me. If you've been doing the assignments by yourself, unless you are a real keener, you may not be able to do the project by yourself. It's going to be a lot of work, and we're going to discuss that now, but it might be too much for one person to handle. If I'm saying that you should have 4 people, then you probably don't want to do it yourself. So please make sure to get in groups of 4 wherever possible. Also, just to make sure to get this out of the way, so I don't have to say it later, you can use GitHub to collaborate and work on your projects, but your repo must be private, okay? Do not have a public repo where you're working on your games, because that'll just be used and copied in subsequent years. And if you have a accidental public repo, I'm going to treat that as you are distributing your solutions and all the academic punishments that come with that, okay? So please, even after the course is over, do not publish your code for the project. It's really important, okay? Because the code for your project can be used for assignment 3 and 4, and I just don't want there to be solutions out there. Okay, but we'll go over that in more detail. So let's go through the specification. So the final course project is to complete a full game using the specification in this document. The game must have the bare minimum functionality here, and any extra functionality will be greatly appreciated. Projects will be done in groups of up to 4 people. Groups of exactly 4 people are greatly preferred. It must be significantly different from existing assignments, okay? So you can't just hand in like a modified assignment 3 and think that you're going to pass the project, okay? So the final project plus report is due on December 17th, 2020 at 11:59 p.m. This is the second last day of exams, and it is the latest that I can possibly have it due and still get it marked in time, okay? So I'm giving myself, I believe it's 4 days to get these projects marked. Actually 3 days if you count the fact that this is due at 11:59. So this is due right at the end of exams, okay? Not the last day of exams, but the second last day of exams. And you will have, let me just go forward with the next thing. So the first thing that you have to do for the project is your group must submit a project proposal on D2L by 11:59 p.m. on November 13th, 2020, okay? So you have 10 days to form your groups and get a project proposal in, and that is as follows. Your proposal will be reviewed to determine whether it is enough work or too much work for the scope of the course. The project proposal should be a single PDF file describing the following information and be about 2 to 3 pages in length, okay? If you really want to go crazy with it and make it longer, that's fine, but I suspect it will need to be at least 2 pages, if not 3 pages. In that, I want you to show your group member names and student IDs, the game name, genre, overall theme, and main gameplay style of the game, some examples of descriptions or drawings of gameplay scenarios involving the game mechanics that I described below, and a list of extra features the game may have which have not yet been completed in the assignments. Okay, so this proposal is worth 5% of the project, so about 3% of the total course. And it's just going to be a single PDF that you submit on D2L. So that's due 10 days from now. And just, I'm very aware that your game may change, okay? And if your game changes by the final submission, basically all you have to do is tell me what changed and why, okay? So if you had like some project proposal and your game was originally going to be like Super Nintendo themed or that sort of 16-bit style, but then you switched to 8-bit, like that's okay. This project proposal is mainly to put a due date on you forming the groups and to get you started thinking about your project, okay? I had a question here. If it is decided that our project is not enough or too much, will we have a second chance to improve and resubmit? So this 5% here, you would have to do something really, really bad in order to not get that 5%. This is basically a free 5% on the assignment. Sorry, I'm just turning off my phone notifications. So what will happen is I will write feedback to your group saying that it's not enough work, please add this stuff, or it's too much work, please take away this stuff. You won't need to resubmit. So if it's too much work, you're not 5% here isn't for you've exactly hit the scope. It's basically have you submitted the document, okay? I think the only time I ever gave less than 5% for the project proposal was someone who had just written like not nearly enough of what I asked for. Okay, so here are the required game features and gameplay elements that must be present in your game. Now, this is going to seem like a hell of a lot of stuff, okay? There's a lot of stuff here, but I think that approximately 2/3 of it has already been done in the assignments, all right? And you are allowed to use your assignment code as the starting basis for the project. So you can take whatever you had from any assignment and start the project right from there, okay? So there's a lot of stuff here, but there's 4 people and you've already gotten most of this stuff done. I just have to include it here, otherwise you won't put it in. So the overview of what I want for your game. So of course, your game must be implemented using the ECS architecture in C++ using only the SFML library, okay? So I said only the SFML library. That's not That's not entirely true, but what I mean is this is the only graphics or gaming related library you're allowed to use, okay? For example, if you want to use JSON files for your configuration files, you are allowed to go out and use like the nloman JSON library or something. So, but what I want is if you plan on using any additional libraries, they must be open source and freely available, and they must not do any sort of game mechanics, physics, rendering, or special effects, okay? So these libraries that you end up using cannot be anything at all even congruent to game programming. JSON parsers are fine. If you end up saying we really want to do some sort of networked game or multiplayer network game, then you can use a networking library. But that's it, okay? There's nothing game related that you're allowed to use for the project. You may use course code already written as the basis for your game. So anything from anyone's assignment can be included. You can make, it has to be a 2D game, right? So you can try to make it 2.5D if you want, but this is of course using SFML. So 2D platformer, a top-down shooter, RPG, action adventure, etc. Someone asked, can we build upon the game engine you provided us, or do we have to implement the game engine? So for example, by the end of assignment 4, the game engine in assignment 4 will be pretty full-fledged, right? So you can just take what I gave you for assignment 4 or what you handed in for assignment 4 and you can start from there, okay? The other thing that I haven't included here is that if you are, for example, if you've been making an indie game in your spare time, okay, you are not allowed to take code from any other source, even if you programmed it. So whatever you write from this game, other than stuff you've written in this course, is not allowed to be copied in, okay? Now, of course, you're going to do things like go to Stack Overflow and get code snippets and help and stuff like that. But please, if you do that, it can't be like big parts of gameplay code. It's like, how do I read from a file in C or C++, or how do I do this type of thing? And please, if you do get something from Stack Overflow, I don't mind at all, but just credit it. So in your code, if you got code from somewhere online, like for example, here's where we found out how to do this little thing in C++, then please just include a source and cite what you're doing there. So you're allowed to take any code that you wrote for this course, but no code that you've written for other things. Okay, so if you're an indie game dev and you already have a game that you've implemented, you're not allowed to just translate that game into this course. Your game must contain at least 3 completely pre-built levels and have a final boss battle. Okay, so interpret that as you will, but of course we've all played video games here. We know what a final boss battle is. It must have some sort of, interesting mechanics and cool effects, etc. It must contain a title screen menu that allows the player to play the game, edit levels, or select options. And I'll show you an example of that in a second. Someone else said, speaking of indie game dev, if we really like our final project and want to expand and publish it, could we? That is a very good question. I'm not sure from a legal standpoint how that goes. So I think that what you should probably do, if you do want to release a game for profit, you cannot sell the game that you made for this course, but you could take your knowledge and reprogram it. Okay, I know that seems pedantic, but if you submitted something to the university for an academic evaluation, I believe you can't sell that thing online after that. So I would have to, if you're very serious about that, then come talk to me afterward and we'll work out the legal details with the university. But for the time being, obviously don't sell any assignments or projects that you've been working on in the course, especially not the code, okay? All I really care about is my solution's not getting online. So please do not publish the code anywhere. So here I'm going to show something. So I just said make some sort of in-game menu, or sorry, a custom menu that allows the player to play the game, edit levels, or select options. There will be a level editor requirement for the project. So I'm not going to get into that yet, but I want to show this. So who out there in the chat has ever played any of these sort of maker games, like Super Mario Maker? This one is called Mega Man Maker. It's really excellent. If you like the Mega Man series of games, you should really try it. So here's what I mean by that. So you're going to have a title screen, and on that title screen, you have a menu, okay? So on this menu here, for example, there are options. In the options, you can configure your controls, video or sound, etc. Now we'll go back. There is also a level editor, so you can build a level. Let's say, for example, I have a new level here. I can drag around and edit the level and then play the level, etc. Okay, so this is how that's done in Mega Man Maker, sorry. Or I could go in and I could actually play the game as it was intended, okay? So yes, if you've done Computer Science 4770 with me, I use this as an example there because it's just a great example. It's very simple. The graphics are simple yet intuitive and effective. And so this is what I want for a main menu. If you can re-implement this exact thing, go ahead. It doesn't have to be this exact thing, but you have to have some sort of attractive title screen with a menu, and that menu is going to, have these things, which is play the game, edit the levels, select options, okay? And I'll get into exactly what the menu has to have in the level editor a bit later. You must also contain some sort of in-game menu. So while you're playing the game, you must have at least one menu that you need to use in order to play the game properly. So for example, if you've played Mega Man, you have a menu that pops up when you pause the game and it allows you to select your weapon or use an E-tank or something like that. If you've played like Zelda, anything from the SNES on up, then of course you pause the game and you're going to be able to equip items, equip weapons and armor, use items, etc. So that is what I mean by this in-game menu. So maybe you have an item selection or an inventory or options, etc. It must contain a level editor that allows for the loading, editing, and saving of game levels. And I have an entire section of this based on that. You must also contain a game over screen for when the game has been finished. And you can like say, congratulations, the princess is saved or whatever, but you can also put in your game credits or Easter eggs or whatever. I want some sort of interesting game over screen that isn't just static text, okay? All levels, player, and game configuration options must be defined in external text files. Okay, so you have to be able to edit those things through the text files, and when you edit them in the menus, it will save those options to the text file. So for example, let's say we have a menu which has game sounds. So you have music volume. Actually, let's just go over here. So for example, in the options here, if we go to video and sound, we have music, right? And we have sound effects, screen size, etc. All of those options must be contained within a text file, and editing these options edits it within the text file as well. And all assets should be gathered or created by the group project members. All right. So you do not have to sit down in Photoshop and literally draw all of your game assets, but as I'll show later, you can't take any game assets from any of the assignments, okay? I had a nightmare scenario last year where I would say, I don't know, at least a third of the class just handed in a Mario game like assignment 3, and it was brutal, and a lot of those people did very poorly. It was quite lazy. I don't know why that happened last year. But in order to get around that, you are not allowed to use any of the assets that I've given you in order to force you to make new assets. So you can already see some of the work that's going to be in the project just is involved around like getting assets and creating a level editor and creating levels and stuff like that. So there's quite a bit of work, and I don't think a single person is going to be able to do that. So game scenes. So far up until assignment 3 and the same thing in assignment 4, we've just had 2 scenes. We've had a menu scene and we've had a gameplay scene. Your project is going to have multiple scenes, and here is what you at least have to have, but you are allowed to make as many scenes as you want. So you have to have a main menu scene that implements the main menu functionality. So that would be like the Mega Man Maker main menu scene, okay? Your game must contain an overworld map scene that allows for level selection and game progression. So for example, if you've ever played Super Mario World, or if you've played Mario Brothers 3 or something like that, there's an overworld map selection scene. I guess you could argue that Mega Man's like 8 boss selection or 8 stage selection thing is an overworld, but I would want like more of an overworld than just a menu. So for example, you would walk between levels, like in Cuphead or something like that. So there's some map that you're walking around in that you can select the levels that you want to play. That's what I want. Not like Mega Man, where it's just a menu. And I want that to also somehow work in the game progression. So for example, if there's a level, like level 1, you can only play level 1 at the start of the game, and then only when you've played level 1 can you go to level 2, right? So the game progression is sort of baked into that overworld map. Someone asked if Star Fox style would be all right. I don't know the Star Fox style, so I can't answer that. I don't remember it. But it's a 2-dimensional game, and I want you walking around as like an avatar or something in which you select levels to be played. So think Cuphead, Super Mario Brothers 3, Super Mario World, that sort of thing. It can be on rails if you want, but there does have to be an overworld view. It must contain a main gameplay scene that implements the game physics of the main gameplay mode. So again, if it's a platformer like Assignment 3 or a top-down Zelda game like Assignment 4, then this would be the scene play type thing. It must contain some sort of inventory or in-game, this is supposed to say menu scene that is used for a relevant function, okay? So for example, you can have an entire scene be just the in-game menu. So if you've played Ocarina of Time or any of the like N64 plus Zelda games, when you bring up the menu, it fills the whole screen, and so that can be an entirely other scene if you want to. It must contain a level editor scene that implements the level editor functionality. So for example, if you're playing the game, that scene is way different than if you're editing the level. So the level editor scene is going to be its own. So the level editing functionality is going to be its own scene. And it must contain a game over scene with some sort of animation and game over / credits. Okay. So those are the scenes that it must contain, but that's not, you're not limited to that whatsoever. Now, this is probably the longest part, but here are the required gameplay and mechanics that I want you to implement in the game. And of course, a lot of this stuff has already been done in many of the assignments. Some of it hasn't. So if you're looking at this and you're seeing like 30 different required gameplay mechanics, we've done probably 20 of them already, okay? So your game must contain all of the following mechanics. Describe how they will be used in the proposal. Okay, so collisions. Your game must contain rectangular bounding box collisions between some entities. So you've already got that done, right? If you're doing assignment 3, you've already got that done. And this does not say that your game can't contain circle-based collisions, but it must contain rectangular bounding box collisions. Bullets or weapons. Your game must include multiple weapons that are usable by the player and swappable during gameplay. So for example, Mega Man has different weapons that they can choose from while they're playing. So switching from like the metal blade saw to the buster or whatever. Or Link could equip the bow or the sword, etc. Okay, so there must be different weapons that are obtained somehow via gameplay that you can swap during the gameplay. That has to be a thing. So you can start to think now that maybe the player would have like a weapons component or an inventory component or something like that, in which you store a flag to say which weapon you have or the ammo associated with each weapon, etc., etc. NPCs. We'll get into this a little bit more in the next lecture. Oh, I had a question. So you can't just have two weapons you can use at once. They need to swap so they aren't using one. Correct. So for example, if you're making like a shoot 'em up type game or a Contra type game, you have like your starting weapon, which might be a pistol. You can use that. Maybe you pick up a shotgun. Maybe you pick up a gravity gun. You have to have interesting weapons, which... Oh, and also, you can't just have different weapons be different skins. Okay? They have to do something different. Like the bullets have to be different. It's not just that, oh, look, I have a 9mm versus I have a 44 Magnum. It's just a different animation. Like a shotgun should have a spread, a rocket launcher should have an area of effect. The weapons should be significantly different from each other. So you have to be able to use one weapon and then switch to another weapon. If you want to use two weapons at a time, like if you're dual wielding or something, that's fine. But you have to be able to switch weapons. Okay, so let's say you have to have at least 3 weapons, ideally more than that, that you can switch between. So there must be non-player characters in the game that acts as enemies or allies for certain gameplay elements. Some of these NPCs must contain basic AI such as pathfinding, shooting, patrolling, or battling with the player. So what I mean by here, this is important, and at least one AI entity in your game must contain interesting pathfinding, okay? Meaning like the A-star search algorithm or a vector field or, what did I call them? Or influence maps, okay? So at some point in your game engine, you have to have either vector fields, influence maps, A-star pathfinding, breadth first search pathfinding. A pathfinding algorithm must be implemented at some level, okay? You can't just have enemies walking into walls trying to get to your player, or at least one enemy must not do that. So this is very important. You must have some sort of pathfinding implemented in your game. Moving tiles. Your game must include some part of a level which moves, such as platforms, elevators, doors, etc. So when I talk about platforms, I mean that there's a platform here, your player stands on it, and when the platform moves, your player moves with it, or if it moves up like an elevator, then your player moves with it. Okay? That has to be there in some way. Hit points and damage. Players and enemy in the game should have hit points or life and take damage and die when they run out of hit points. And that is going to be done in assignment 4, so we don't need to really worry about that one too much. Status effects. Your game must contain at least 3 separate status effects which the player can obtain in some way. So for example, if you pick up an item, or if you have a power-up, or you use an ability, or you collide with an enemy, and these status effects must alter the gameplay for a limited amount of time. So for example, you could have a speed potion. If you drink a speed potion, this makes the player walk faster or something like that. You could have a temporary invulnerability like a Super Mario star where you play different music and now you can hit things and you kill them. Or you could have a quad damage type item like in Quake. Okay, so for example, you pick up this item and for 60 seconds you're doing way more damage. So you have to have at least 3 separate status effects, and now you can think about, okay, well, maybe we have to have a component now which stores the status effects, all right? So you can see how all this stuff, it's not difficult to implement, but it is going to be a lot of programming. Objects and inventory. The player should have an inventory of items which can be picked up during play and used somehow. For example, health packs, sprint potions, and an in-game menu must show the available items of the player somehow, okay? It doesn't need to be as complex as the in-game menus for Mega Man Maker or Zelda, but you have to have some sort of menu that says, okay, here's the items I have available, and I can swap between them, and I can use them or equip them, etc. Raycasting. Visibility or raycasting calculations should be used in some form in the game. For example, if you have an enemy turret, maybe the turret doesn't shoot at the player until the player is within line of sight of the turret, okay? So something in the game has to be line of sight based, and we will actually be doing that for assignment 4. So you'll have that done for you if you do assignment 4. Lighting effects. Your game must contain some sort of lighting effect, similar to the one demonstrated in class via the Sight and Light demo. For example, if the player is carrying a torch or a flashlight around the level, or placing light sources within the level. Okay? So you have to have some sort of lighting effect that, you know, some part of the level gets darker and some part of the level gets lighter, or some part is now visible where it wasn't visible before. All right, so that has to be there in the game. Gravity and acceleration. So there must be some form of gravity or attractor in the game that applies acceleration to the player. So for example, if you're making a 2D platformer, then gravity is pretty obvious, and you won't need to add anything because you've already done gravity for assignment 3. But if you're looking at like assignment 4, like a top-down action-adventure type game, where it's like kind of impossible to add gravity since you're looking down, then what you would do here is maybe you would have like a gravity well out in space, or you would have an attractor or something like that where enemies get sucked into it. But you have to have some sort of gravity or attractor in the game that applies acceleration to the player or acceleration to the NPCs. Your game or camera and worldview. Your game must contain at least 2 different camera views to be used in interesting ways. And please also play around with viewports as well. You could create mini maps, stuff like that, in order to satisfy this condition. Another question, if the lighting effect has raycasting, is that fine for raycasting, or do we have to have a separate raycasting instance? So I will want to have, someone asked, how much time do you have for this? So this is due a month and 2 weeks from now. So you have 6 weeks approximately to do this. But as I said before, and as the students in the class know, most of this has already been done for them in the assignments, right? So it's not as much work as it looks because the assignments have covered a lot of this stuff. So if you're looking for a stricter time frame, after you submit the proposal, you have a month to work on the project. All right. Oh, and yes, I will say that this project does overlap a bit with assignment 4, but while you're doing assignment 4, you're also technically working on the project, right? So don't think of assignment 4 as just extra stuff. You are literally doing work for free on the project by doing assignment 4. Okay. So as to the question, if the lighting effect has raycasting, is that fine for raycasting, or do we have to have a separate raycasting instance? So the lighting effects, I want to be lighting or visibility effects, okay? So that's one thing. A separate thing is whether or not there's gameplay mechanics that involve visibility or raycasting, okay? Like, for example, that turret or an enemy following you. So these are separate things. So the lighting effects are separate from the raycasting, even though lighting will involve raycasting, okay? Pathfinding or steering. So some entities in the game must exhibit non-trivial pathfinding and smooth steering behavior. So what this means, again, non-trivial pathfinding. So trivial pathfinding is just walking straight toward the player and not trying to avoid any sort of obstacles. Non-trivial pathfinding is actually using some sort of pathfinding algorithm that we talked about in a previous lecture to navigate an NPC or the player around obstacles in an automatic way. Okay, so you have to have some form of non-trivial pathfinding. Whatever you use, that's up to you. And you must implement some sort of smooth steering behavior. So for example, you could make a homing missile, and the homing missile would smooth steer toward its target, and that would be fine. Okay, so smooth steering doesn't necessarily have to be the player, it could be the weapons or other game mechanics that are implemented like that. Game progression. Your overworld map should somehow lock or unlock game progression based on the levels you've completed so far, or other mechanics. Like, for example, maybe you have to collect a certain amount of coins until the next level is unlocked. Okay. Shaders. We haven't talked about shaders yet, so I won't get into in depth here. But there's a whole later lecture on shaders. So some entities in the game must use shaders to alter their appearance in some meaningful way. And what I want is you to use 3 different shaders for 3 different effects, okay? So for example, one thing that shaders are really good at is like modifying the color of an entity or something. Or making it transparent, or making it blurry or fuzzy or glowing or whatever. So if you pick up like an invulnerability star, and while you're invulnerable, you apply a shader that alters the appearance of the player character, that is a perfect example of using shaders. But as I said, we'll have a whole lecture on that. User interface and HUD. Your game must contain a user interface or heads-up display which displays information such as player health, ammo, game progression, status effects, NPC life bars, etc. Okay? So how much of this you actually need is dependent on your actual game and its mechanics. Excuse me. But you do have to at least store, like if your game has ammo or status effects or health, like you have to store that or display that on the screen somehow. Your game must have music that plays in the background, as well as unique sounds associated with attacking, taking or dealing damage, killing enemies, picking up items, finishing levels, etc. Okay? So that's not going to be too hard. That just involves going out and finding some sounds that you can play in the game. We're going to cover the playing of sounds and stuff for assignment 4, and it's going to be dead simple, so don't worry. Options. Your game must have an options menu on the title screen, which allow you to change the following settings. So again, this is what this looks like. If you have, if you take Mega Man Maker as an example, then this option menu, this is what I want. So you can configure the controls. So for example, the keyboard. So here's a good way to do this. Press a key for left, right? So it lets you do this. So if I press A for left, press a key for right. Now I press D, press a key for up, press a key for down. So some way of configuring the keyboard. All right. You can have a gamepad if you want, but that's not going to be required. And also for video and sound, maybe you want to change the resolution of the game, but you have to be able to change the music and sound effects volume independently. So music, sound effects volume, these are separate options. Game difficulty. So I want your games to have 3 different difficulties. And they either have to do exactly what I say here, or you make them do something more interesting than that, okay? So your normal difficulty is what gets played by default with all the normal settings. You have to have an easy difficulty, and what I've suggested here, in easy, you deal twice the damage and you take half the damage. And on hard, you deal half the damage and you take twice the damage, okay? So these are just examples of what this would do, and then you would use this in the game to alter the gameplay. What I've suggested is that you could use a sort of global difficulty namespace to store variables related to those settings. So for example, if you have an options namespace and you store the music volume or you store the sound volume or the game difficulty, etc., and then you use those in all of your calculations. I also want you to be able to rebind the main gameplay scene keys. For example, moving left, right, shoot, etc. So however you accomplish that graphically through the user interface that you make for the menu, that's fine. And I just showed an example of how they did that for Mega Man Maker. Extras. 10% of the mark of the project is reserved for extra or new mechanics that are not specifically listed here. So examples could be really cool special effects, super complicated weapons, a very polished user interface, local multiplayer, networked multiplayer, something like that. So if all you do is include what I have said in this document, you can get a 90% maximum. You have to do extra stuff that's not listed here in order to get that bonus 10%. And you're going to list for me why you think it's worth the extra 10%, okay? Now, as long as you've done some extra, I'm not going to be super hardcore with these marks, but I do want you to go a bit above and beyond to get the 100% in the project, okay? So, I know I've listed a lot of stuff here, but I'm sure that all of you could come up with some really cool stuff to put in these games. You have already done that in the assignments. Make really cool stuff. So 10% of the mark of the project is for this bonus stuff. Okay. So I said at the beginning of this lecture that I was going to have something on game loops. I'm scrapping that. This has gone a little bit over time, so I'm no longer going to do that for this assignment or for this lecture. So it's just going to be about the project. I had a question in the chat. So can we put loot boxes in the game? You know what? That's funny. You can put loot boxes in the game as long as they're not real money, right? So why not? Maybe you could put skins in the game. You could put weapons in the game that you get from loot boxes, as long as it's some sort of in-game acquired currency that does that. And that will, I guess that will give you the best possible education for the current mobile gaming market, right? Is putting loot boxes in. So why not? Loot boxes can be a extra feature that you put in if you want. As long as those loot boxes are not required for me to put in the game. Oh, crap. Crap. All right, let's do it live. Gameplay mechanics, I forgot something. I am going to update this, but... okay, I'm going to say it here, and then after class, I'm going to edit the file. Okay? But your game also has to have replays in it. So you also have to take the event system that we've made and be able to play back game level replays. So I'm going to put that in. So you have to have replays in your game. Replays meaning some way of storing the actions that you input at specific frames and then playing them back in the game. And so I'm going to put that in a lecture of how we can implement that. And actually, I think I already went over that, right? In the event lecture, I talked about how you could implement it, because all you would need to do is have a text file with which frame you implemented an action on, and then just the strings of the action. Yeah. So your game has to be able to play back replays for levels. And however you do that is fine. However you implement that, I just want you to be able to play back a replay of the game itself. Okay. So to be able to record replays and save replays. But that should be pretty easy. That's not that bad. And I will update this document and put that back on the website. All right. So the level editor. The level editor is important, and we will have an entire section on tools. There's an entire lecture on tools coming up soon. So your game must contain a level editor similar to the one found in Mega Man Maker or Super Mario Maker. All of your main gameplay levels must be able to be made from within the level editor. Okay? So this is important. All of the levels that you include, they have to be editable within the level editor, and they have to be made by your level editor. The overworld map and the menus, etc., they can all be hard-coded. That's fine. This level editor should operate on a grid similar to the one found in assignment 3 and 4. The level editor should have a menu that allows you to select an existing level to edit. I have provided here on my GitHub, if I click this, does this work? Let's allow this. So I've linked so this is my GitHub here, and there's a project called StarDraft, and it's a map editing program for StarCraft, and I've included here an example of how you can list files in a directory in C++. Where is it? Yeah, so here, for example, for AutoPath in standard file system directory iterator maps, name equals p.path.string. So I've just included a link there in, if you download the StarDraft project and you compile and run it, you can see there's a lot of features there that you can borrow for your game. Okay. Someone asked, could dialogue or story options count? Choices in one level affect in another level. Yes, so that's fine. So for your bonus, if you want to have like really cool dialogue systems or having choices you make early in the game, like do you kick the puppy or do you feed the puppy, affect things later on in the game, that's fine. That would be definitely counted toward the bonus. So here's the okay. You should be able to select and place any texture or animation defined in the assets file into the level. So if I go into the build part of Mega Man Maker, their interface is quite nicely done. Okay, so for example, here I've selected a tile, but if I click it again, I have this menu in which I can select all the different tiles in the game. So for example, if I want to place ice blocks here, I can do that. Then I can place the starting point for Mega Man, and then I can play the level. Okay, so this is what I want yours to be. And if I jump up here, like this is all of this now I can play the game with those physics. So you do not have to have a menu that is as complicated as this. This is quite a complicated menu system. I don't suspect it to be like this. One thing that you can do, which is actually pretty easy to implement and is a good starting point. So for example, here we can place NPCs. Any animation that you have defined in the assets file must be selectable somehow within the level editor. But what you could do, for example, if we click on a tile, then instead of having a big menu come down like this, you see how this texture is now on my mouse cursor? One thing that I've seen done in the past is that if you use the mouse wheel button, you would be able to scroll through all of the different textures available for that NPC, okay? Or for that tile. So some way, maybe you could press like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or something like that in order to select different things, some key on the keyboard, but you have to be able to select the different textures and animations that you've defined inside the assets file. But here, so all that is pretty easy, right? Because you just select a texture, you place it on the screen. You just have it hover over the mouse cursor, and when you click the button, it gets placed into the level. But here's the kind of tricky part. All parameters of specific entities must be editable via the level editor. So for example, this can include whether NPCs block vision, movement, or neither, the hit points or damage of NPCs in the level, and the patrol points of moving tiles or NPCs. So this means, for example, if you want to make an elevator in your level editor, you have to somehow be able to define, okay, I've placed the tiles that will be that will make up the elevator, and now I have to be able to define the 2 points that it will oscillate between, like up and down, or the many points of a patrol of an NPC or something like that. So this is the really kind of tricky part of the level editor. So how you accomplish this parameter input is up to you. One way to build the menu, there's a typo. One way to build the menu, one way may be to build a menu that pops up. I got to rephrase that. Or you could select a parameter via a key press and then edit it up or down via the mouse wheel. I don't care exactly how you do it, as long as you do it and explain how to do it in the report, okay? So let's just say, for example, I've placed a tile, and then I press the P button, and now my mouse cursor changes, and now I'm placing the patrol points in the level. Okay, so any way that you can come up with to do this in the level editor, completely up to you. And as long as it's functional, I don't care how pretty it is. Okay, so that's the level editor. What I recommend, honestly, is that there's a bunch of different stuff happening in this game, as you can tell. There's 4 people. It's a month worth of work. It's going to be kind of intense, right? But it's half the course, so it should be. It's a game programming course. We got to make a game. I recommend, but do not require, that you split up the work in the course based on different modules like this, okay? So for example, maybe you have someone who's working on the level editor, so they can focus their efforts on getting that done. Maybe you have someone who's working on getting the assets and the animation done. Maybe you have someone who's working on the main menu. Maybe you have someone who's working on the game physics. Now, with that in mind, please understand that people are human, and every year I have at least 2 groups where the day before the project is due, someone will come to me and say, we haven't heard from this person in 2 weeks. Oh my. Well, what do you do then, right? Please, 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 please. If you have any problems with someone in your group not doing the work that they said they would do, or if you feel like they should be working faster or doing more, please come to me. Your feedback will be anonymous, and we will work it out, okay? I can talk to the person. I can talk to the group. I have mediated many a trouble before without any hard feelings. Some people are just going through hard times, especially this term, and, maybe they're not getting things done on time, but don't wait until you haven't heard from them for days or weeks before we try and rectify that problem. It's very easily solvable most of the time. And this always happens, but if you come to me 2 or 3 days before the project is due and say we haven't heard from this person in weeks, or they haven't let us see the code, you have to come to me before that, okay? I literally have to have the mark submitted by like the 21st of December. There's nothing I can do after that without possibly delaying your graduation or something, okay? So please come to me early, and we can work it out, and it'll be no problem. And if, like, for example, if you have 4 people going strong, and then one person ends up dropping the course, I understand that's not your fault. Maybe we could scale back the game a little bit. So please send me an email. Talk to me on Discord. We will work out any problems that are of a human and group member nature. I promise you we can work those out, okay? But with that being said, you probably want to have people working on specific functionalities, because it's hard to do context switching. So you don't want, for example, everyone to do 1/4 of the work on everything. You want someone out there looking for assets. You want someone out there doing the level editor. But at the same time, if that one person who said they would do the level editor has an issue, maybe you should have 2 people assigned to every thing, right? So someone just doesn't disappear for 2 weeks and then come back with nothing done on their module. So I would say for everything in the game, like the level editor, the menus, the assets, the whatever, have 2 people in charge of that. That way they can each keep each other in check. That is a good system to do, okay? Even if one person is really the one doing all the work, constantly check back in with people and see how they're doing. Okie doke. The next thing you have is a YouTube game trailer. So you are going to make a YouTube video trailer for your game that is between 2 and 3 minutes long, and I will publish that game trailer on your website, on my website. So after your game is complete, you can submit this game trailer by the end of the term for that 5%. Trailers will be listed on the course website for future classes to see, and you can also add them to your portfolio. Here's the funny thing. 2 or 3 years from now, or maybe even next term, when you go to apply for a job, or 10 years from now when you're looking back fondly on this course and all the things that you've learned, this YouTube game trailer may be the only thing that actually exists of your game. You might lose that code. Maybe nobody will ever download and install your game or compile it, but me or the TAs. But this YouTube trailer is something you will probably go back and look at. It is also something that you can add to your online portfolio. Okay, if you don't have a portfolio, you should create one. If you don't have a website, you should make one. And instead of putting the code on there or putting the executable there that nobody will download, make a little YouTube video trailer. Make it look as fancy as you can. Put a little music in there. Cherry pick the gameplay elements that make your game look awesome, right? And I am requiring this as part of the project because I really want you to have that, and this will be more for you than it will be for me, okay? Because you want to be able to show off your stuff, and YouTube trailers are excellent ways to do that. So it has to be at least 2 minutes long, and it has to be at most 3 minutes long. That's what that is, and that's 5% of the project. Game assets. Your game cannot reuse any assets that have been given out in the course, except for the Mega Man or Link assets, okay? You do not need to create original game assets from scratch, but you do need to obtain them from somewhere. So for example, the way I got the Mario assets was searching for Mario sprite sheets online and then going into Photoshop and actually editing them to size. All right, so in addition to the YouTube game trailer, you must have a report. And in the past, this was a PDF file, but those are so boring, I don't want those anymore. Let's consider this like a presentation, okay? So you're going to do a presentation of your game to me, but instead of doing a live presentation where you can screw up or the technology could fail, or maybe you go to that one little place of your level where the game crashes, you are going to make a pre-recorded presentation / report of your game. So your project must contain a video report / presentation between 10 and 15 minutes long containing the following information. So an overview of the game giving all details described in game overview above, including asset sources. A description of all extra features put in the game on top of those that we specifically asked for. Demonstration of all the game mechanics with at least one full level playthrough. Also, demo the level editor. So the level editor, you should create a new level from scratch, make the level, and then play it to show that it works. A detailed list of controls for the game and instructions on how to play and what the objectives are. Notes on anything that you tried to implement that you didn't get working. And this video must contain audio commentary. I know that listening to your own voice is torture for most people. I have finally come to terms with listening to my own voice after teaching online. It's brutal at first, but it does get better. And so this must be uploaded to YouTube. It can be an unlisted video if you want, and if you want me to, I will list it on the website, but only with your permission, okay? So if you want me to list this on the website for future classes to be able to see, I will, that's an opt-in. So the game trailers will automatically be put on the website, but the reports are opt-in, okay? Because this is sort of your class presentation. And please, by all means, use like OBS to go record your gameplay and then edit some commentary in, or do it all live, or whatever you want, however you choose to do that, but it has to explain everything about your game. Okay, that is basically the presentation for your game, and one of the main ways we'll be marking it, and it is worth 15% of the project. So that's about 8% of the entire course, so it is important. Now, I am not judging you on your ability to do video editing. I am judging you on your ability to include the information that I asked for, okay? So if it looks nice, that's great. It's easier to get all the marks if it looks really nice and if it sounds really nice. But it will 90% of this 15% will be whether or not you have included all the information in the video that I asked for. Okay. When it comes to game ideas, if you are absolutely stuck for a game idea, check out some older NES or SNES games or Genesis or Master System. There's lots of great games out there that you can borrow inspiration from. And you know what? Here's something. Let me move this up. If you want to just take an NES game and completely recreate it, you're completely welcome to do that. If you just take like Super Mario Bros. 3 and make Super Mario Bros. 3, or if you take Mega Man 2 and make Mega Man 2, that's fine. You don't have to be super original with your game mechanics. You just have to implement them. This is a game programming course, not a game design course, okay? Just be sure that if the game that you chose to implement does not have all the required project features, you have to implement those required project features. Okay, you can't just go take Marble Madness for the NES, which is just a ball rolling around the screen, and think you've created the project. No. If you do take another game like Mega Man or Contra or something like that as your aesthetic or as your basis for gameplay, you still have to have all of the different elements in the game. I got a question which said, where are the previously completed game tutorials on your website? You can type !playlist, and that will bring up all the lectures for this course. Okay. So that is the project. I think it will be really fun. I know that it seems like an incredible amount of work, but realize that you can do the report in 20 minutes. I know that you could sit there for hours and hours and hours and be a complete perfectionist about it, but you can just do a Let's Play video where you go through and explain all that stuff and just record yourself live, just like how I'm streaming live here. And a lot of this stuff, like I said, about 2/3 of this stuff, by the time you're finished assignment 4. So let's look at the stuff that will be new that isn't in assignments. Collisions, you've done that. Bullets and weapons, you've almost done all of that. So the multiple weapons part is new. The inventory of switching weapons part is new. NPCs, you will have NPCs in assignment 4. Moving tiles, we won't have done moving tiles, but the NPCs from assignment 2 you can actually use as moving tiles. Hit points and damage, that's going to be in assignment 4. Status effects, you're going to have one status effect in assignment 4. Objects and inventory, this is a new part, okay, so that's going to be new. Raycasting, that's going to be in assignment 4. Lighting effects, that's going to be new. Assignment 3, assignment 4, this is going to be new. New, partially in assignment 4, assignment 4, new. So there's 5 new things here. It's not that bad, okay? But there is a lot of programming. So you should split the work amongst the group and effectively carry that out. I highly recommend using Github because it's just a great way to do collaboration. If you start by sending around zip files to each other, then don't do that. I had a question, previously complete game tutorials from students from past years. So I do not have game tutorials available. This will be the first year that those tutorial videos will actually be a thing. But if you go to teaching, I actually forgot to add the game trailers from last year to the website. So I'll do that. But if you go down here, for example, to my 4770 team project course, you can actually see game trailers from that course. And so you can go look at those. For example, this was a really cool game called Egghead. If I turn on the desktop audio here, let me just play this for a minute. Okay, so that was a trailer that it was a really great trailer. All right, that was made for Computer Science 4770. They had 3 months to program their game. So if your game's level editor doesn't end up looking like that, it's okay. That game was actually made from scratch in JavaScript and HTML5, so they had access to like CSS and menus and stuff. So if your game doesn't look like that, that's okay. But you will have a level editor in this course. So please try and split up that work effectively. So if you go to my website, those trailers are available there, and I will try to also include the trailers if I can find them from last year. So that's the project. If anyone has any more questions, you can ask them in the chat. Yes, the trailers, not tutorials. But yeah, I will be including them on the website, and you can just like imagine being able to show that or link that on your resume, right? When you go to apply for a job. Like if you cherry pick all the cool parts of your game and the level editor and edit them together in a nice way and make a game trailer like that, that's just, it's worth a lot more than you may understand right now. In the future, you'll appreciate having been forced to do something like that. Okay, so I am not going to lecture on game loops today. So let's put game loops back down here. So what in the hell? So game loops, we'll put that back down here, and I'll teach that at some point in the future. Course project information. Here we go. Okay, so that's it for today. If at any point anyone in the class has any questions, ask me sooner rather than later. You have 10 days from today, okay? So if we go back here, the project proposal is due on D2L 10 days and 12 hours from now, okay? 10 days and 9 hours from now. Get your groups together. I will be posting a spreadsheet where you can post your name if you want to find a group, if you do not have a group. I know sometimes finding groups is difficult, but get on that immediately. Do not wait until the day before this project proposal is due, because maybe you have one idea for a game and another person has another idea for a game, okay? So let's see, November 13th. Maybe I'll give you 2 weeks. So maybe I'll give you 2 weeks for that, okay? So I'll give you an extra 4 days just to give you 2 weeks to do that. But like that's just giving you not less time for the project, but I want to make sure everyone has a group. So let's just say this is going to be the 17th. So let's edit that here. And I'll update this on the website as well. There we go. So you have November 17th, and that gives you exactly a month. That's nice timing, actually. So exactly a month from the project proposal to the game itself. Okay? So let's do that. Perfect. All right, thanks for tuning in. That's all I have today, and I don't see any more questions. So I'll see you on Thursday.